All right, everyone, welcome back into another NFL DFS video. Going to be breaking down the Week 8 main slate here for you guys, giving you guys my first look build, the potential core plays that we're going to be on, some values and some stacks. But first, we're going to get into a quick recap from Week 7. All right, guys, so let's start off with taking a recap of the first look build that I gave you guys last week. This lineup ended up being pretty darn solid. Obviously, Gadsden ended up being pretty huge there, 32 DFS points. The one flaw in this lineup ended up being Bill, Krosky, Merritt, and we were just punting to the Giants DST at that point in the week, but that lineup would have still cashed. So the min you need to cash in single entry contest, double ups, was 155.34. So it ended up being a pretty darn good week in that regard. We see the lineup builder video that I posted for you guys ended up being a very solid build there as well. I mentioned that I was kind of treating Dak as more of a core play as the week progressed. We did not stack CeeDee Lamb in that lineup specifically because it was harder to get to him. I felt like Chris Olave, who I mentioned was a core play last week, Rashid Shaheed, who I wasn't on as a core play, but he was the next best option there. I just was a little bit worried about really the outcome of the game. Okay, ended up being a blowout, and he was part of the reason as to why it was a blowout. Those touchdowns could have went other ways, and then maybe he wouldn't have been, obviously as useful. He was definitely involved though. And then let's recap it a little bit further. So yes, as we progress, I ended up being on Dak as a core play. This is the player pool taken from the 9-5 lineup. Josh Jacobs ended up being a core play. That was the tough part about the week, though. We had some weather situations and an injury there. So Josh Jacobs, we were a little bit worried about, might sit in this game, which would have meant Emmanuel Wilson was one of the best values on the slate. He ended up playing and ended up scoring 2 touchdowns, ended up being a good core play. JT was obviously a core play that we're on. Junkins was a good core play. And then Bill. So Bill, we were on high, okay, was in a very good spot, and he did not work out. That being said, as we go through the write-up here, I ended up specifically calling out my favorite pivot was DeAndre Swift, who ended up going off. Now, if you pivoted to Swift off of Junkins, you might have been kicking yourself. If you went from Bill, Krosky, Merritt to DeAndre Swift, you were pretty darn good for the week there. Another pivot that I like was also Jordan Mason, who was a little bit TD dependent. He did end up scoring a touchdown, which obviously ended up working out there as well. Let's go ahead and talk about the quarterbacks that I was on as well. So Dak, again, core play. I did start to pump the brakes slightly on Caleb Williams as we progressed, but that was probably my biggest miss on the week because it ended up being more of a DeAndre Swift game and Kyle Monangai game. The stacks with him did not end up working out. And again, the weather in that game, I did probably overplayed that a little bit because Chris Olave, who I had originally as a core play, I ended up knocking him down a little bit, which he was still in a lot of the good lineups that we had last week. Some stacks, some low exposure stacks. Spencer Rattler with Chris Olave, Jacoby Brissett with Trey McBride. Obviously, those stacks end up hitting. And then this was one of my favorite calls of the week, guys. Bo Nix stacked with Courtland Sutton. It would not be shocking if this ends up being the best stack on the slate. Kind of was. Obviously, Bo Nix ended up going off, and Courtland Sutton ended up doing what we expected him to do, scoring about 16.5 DFS points. Had a play designed for him on the goal line where he almost scored a touchdown. Very good defensive play on that game. That's what we're missing there. If we just got a touchdown, would have been an even better week. Low exposure. I kind of mentioned I was worried about Jaden Daniels being chalk. I didn't really get it, especially as price tag, especially with his top pass catchers being out. That being said, we obviously could have been stacking him with Chris Moore and also Zach Ertz. Jordan Love stacked with Tucker Kraft ended up working out there as well. So kind of nailed it there. Quarterback slate wise, running back wise as well. Kind of felt like we nailed it as well. Again, Swift as a pivot. Spears did not really end up working out. Vidal did not end up working out as well. Receiver-wise, kind of a straightforward week. This was probably the biggest miss on the week where I kind of specifically mentioned all the LA Chargers receivers are in play, but the one I liked the most was Quentin Johnston, who I haven't watched the full game, but I do know Justin Herbert did miss him a couple of times. He still ended up with 11 DFS points, still ended up working out. It ended up being the correct decision, but not the most correct decision. Ladd McConkey outscored Johnston, and then Keenan Allen obviously went off. Keenan Allen was in the GPP Million Maker lineup with Gadsden. Then Rashid Rice kind of just an easy play, and then Chris Olave. Talked about him in detail. Again, slightly bumped him down just due to that game. I was a little bit worried about it, but we were still going out of our way to target him. Then I will say like Waddle and Golden kind of misses at the bottom end of that. But as you guys can see, as I was ranking it, Lamb, Jefferson, Sutton, Johnston, Rice, Olave, pretty good. Mentioned I was going to eat the chalk on Rice. And then tight end wise. So I did end up getting off of Harold Fannin as the week progressed due to the weather. Okay. And that is something that this is where everything that I basically recapped at this point is all the information you watch in this video. If you guys watched this first look video, the core plays video, and also the lineup builder video, knew to expect that. Okay, those are all my thoughts basically throughout the week. I don't necessarily love the idea of recapping a write-up that's just for my 9-to-5 members only, because what I'm recapping is the content and information I gave out to you guys to be successful. And I would say, obviously, I gave you guys literally GPP winning information, right? I did mention Harold Fannin would be the core play, but then the weather made me kind of adjust that slightly to the point where I was just kind of clicking on whichever tight end I ended up on at that price tag, because I kind of felt they were priced correctly then at that point. So if you had the salary left over, you're getting to Trey McBride. If you didn't, you're just going down that list. So Warren ended up going off, Kraft ended up going off, Fannin ended up going off. Fannin wasn't necessarily terrible. Junkins obviously just went off, and a lot of field position situations where they just didn't have to throw the football that much. Mason Taylor ended up playing 90% of the snaps. Terrible quarterback play. Mayer was okay. And then Gadsden, obviously the GPP winner on the slate, that ended up being a pretty huge spot, which is something I showed you guys again in literally the first video last week. And then, yeah, DST wise as well, pretty darn good. So New England, Carolina, Cleveland, and then Arizona even was fine if you guys need to punt down that low. So we go ahead and get into the lineups that I played specifically, and also was telling you guys to play. The issue with this was the weather. We were a little bit concerned about the weather and any adjustment that we would have to make. And I will say overall, pretty darn good here as well. The only probably mistake was getting on build that much. But my whole thought process with kind of the cash lineups that we were getting to was just eat the chalk and then be more correct in the field at the quarterback position, which ended up working out. So you see I was on Dak, Bill there, which again, eating the chalk, and again, specifically called out Swift as a good pivot off of Junkins and Bill. So hopefully some people did that. Obviously, if you swap to Swift, a little bit disappointed there again with Junkins. But if you swap to Swift off of Merritt, just with this lineup alone, sitting pretty darn good. Then we go ahead and take a peek at kind of the other build that we were kind of looking at there as well. Bo Nix with Corn Sutton. And this was another thing where as the week progressed, I'm like, what's going on with Bo Nix? As you guys realized, Bo Nix was my third ranked quarterback on the slate. Again, Williams was a miss for sure. But as we progress, my great matchup. We know we're playing Sutton. He's in a good matchup. And so I just ended up getting there as well. Johnston, again, didn't miss, but wasn't as good as we would like. Sutton, Rice, Kraft, Jacob ended up being pretty darn solid there. And then the slight pivot build that I gave you guys as well. As I called out in the Discord chat, I was going to be going to Zach Ertz as opposed to Emmanuel Wilson there. This was obviously in case Jacobs was inactive, but we also gave ourselves plenty of wiggle room if we need to make some slate adjusting changes to our lineup there. And then favorite GPP build. This is the one where I'm probably kicking myself the most from last week's write-up, because some people are going to say it's not very close to the Millie Maker lineup, but it kind of is. It really is. So obviously Gadsden's there and Johnston's there. One simple pivot would have been to Keenan Allen there, right? And if you go to Keenan Allen there, you're going to be able to afford a better quarterback. And who are the quarterbacks that we'd be targeting if we had a little bit more money? Well, because we have CeeDee Lamb and Sutton, or these two already, right? It would have been Herbert, Dak, or Bo Nix who ended up going off. And then you would have needed to go to Swift in that build specifically. And then there would have been a bunch of different pivots that you could have maybe potentially done to get to Jonathan Taylor there as well. But four pretty darn awesome weeks. Again, I was pretty worried about week 7 there, but also it was a pretty fun week. And I think I did a very good job of explaining why I thought it was fun. And we actually saw that play out exactly because we were, again, on the correct spots there. And this is exactly why I love giving out information to you guys. That is why I love people being able to take the advice I give out, make some slight adjustments like that, and then be able to potentially go off and have a very awesome week in GPP. So hopefully you guys were able to do that. Let me know in the comment section if you guys did that. We are going to go ahead here and jump on into week 8. And real quickly here, guys, I do hate doing the recaps. It's like a self pat on the back all the time, or it's the exact opposite of that. If it's a bad week, it's just like, sorry, I messed up for you guys. But I did want to spend some time on last week because, again, it seemed like it was going to be a fun week. It was not as straightforward as the last, 3 weeks prior to that. I felt like we did a good job breaking that down. So, yes, getting into week 8, let's start out here with the running backs because DraftKings did a very good job with their pricing here for week 8. Okay, we have to make a decision whether or not we want to play Jonathan Taylor. Okay, Jonathan Taylor is priced at almost 10K. He's finally priced correctly. And we have finally, last week, we started to feel it, where the pricing was starting to get enforced correctly, where we're not going to be able to make these great builds, or it was going to be tougher to make those great builds, which ended up holding true. But this week, it's even going to be more difficult. Now, he does draw a phenomenal matchup here going against the Tennessee Titans, a team that they are going to be, pretty heavy favorites against as well. So the question becomes, how many snaps can we expect him to get? Last week, guys, it was a game that they're pretty much in control of for most of the game. It was kind of a blowout. He still ended up playing 86% of the snaps. So if we can afford to fit JT into our builds, we're going to do so. CMC is another player who he played in 74% of the snaps. He still got a lot of work in the passing game. The game plan was clearly designed around him, and they were able to get the run game going a lot more effectively last week with George Kittle in the game at tight end. George Kittle did not get any targets in that game, any receptions, had 2 targets. This is a little bit more of a difficult matchup for the run game going against Houston. They might try to game scheme a little bit more of a passing script. I don't want to say I'm going to fade CMC at all. Definitely not. But he's in a spot where I might be even weight on him. That's kind of what I ended up doing last week with Javonte Williams and Breece Hall. I think that could be the approach there with CMC. And that's because we have Bijan Robinson in a great spot. So last week, guys, Bijan Robinson ended up having 88% of the snaps, and now he gets this glorious matchup against the Miami Dolphins, a spot where we just know to attack it at this point. So on average, guys, they are giving up the 3rd most DFS points per game to opposing running backs. They're giving up the most yards. They're not giving up that many touchdowns. Okay, Jenkins ended up getting 3 touchdowns last week in the rushing game, which did shift it a little bit. And a lot of people were actually kind of dogging on Jenkins because he got goal line carries, and they're looking at his yards per carry as a result. I'm like, what are we watch the film first before you jump on someone's yards per carry. They're playing with the lead a bunch. That means the defense is going to be keen on the rush a little bit more. And of course the yards per carry are going to go down then as the game progresses. Just a weird thing that people were mad about with Jenkins. I'm like, yeah, he was just a correct play in a good spot. Bijan Robinson here is just the correct play in a good spot, especially considering the pricing. Robinson is the clear-cut core play on the slate. He should be priced basically the same as those two, and he's not. Now, we're already going to see the issue is playing both of these two really handicaps our ability to thus make a good build from there. It just does. It's as simple as that. And then from there, guys, the other running backs are going to be more difficult to get to. Devon Achane, is fine. He continues to get a decent amount in the passing game. It will be interesting to see if they kind of got a glimpse, if Mike McDaniel's got a glimpse of how they could use Devon Achane in basically the same capacity that the Niners were able to do on Sunday Night Football with CMC. I'm not going to say they're the exact same running back, but you can use those two in pretty similar ways. And so that'll be interesting to see if that ends up happening. Not a terrible play. I do think James Cook is going to be one of the better options on the slate, guys. He is playing about 70% of the snaps. Now, in their last game where they were playing from behind a little bit more, he only played 53% of the snaps. So that is a little bit concerning for sure there. But I'm going to assume they're going to be pretty heavy favorites in this game against the Carolina Panthers, especially if Bryce Young is out, who has been playing pretty darn well. And so if we can, let's just say the min amount of snaps James Cook's going to get is about 55%, upside of getting 75% in a pretty good matchup. And guys, even still last week, he ended up getting 17 carries. Okay, the issue is hasn't been as involved in the receiving game lately. To me, I think they're going to watch the film coming in off of the bye week and say, yep, let's get James Cook the football a little bit more in the passing game, and we're going to be good to go. I think that's going to be something that they figure out. And so I really think he's going to be one of the better running back plays on the slate. From there, I do want to talk about Quinshaw Jenkins as well. Rashad White. Sorry, not Jenkins. Jenkins gets a more difficult matchup against the Patriots, a game that could be a negative game script. Rashad White, if Bucky Irving is out, he also gets a pretty good matchup against the Saints, who do give up a decent amount of opportunities in the passing game to opposing running backs. And this is a game that probably would favor a good game script there for the Bucs, a more run-heavy game script. And so he's going to be one of the more interesting plays if Bucky Irving's out. He's going to be close to a core play, probably a high exposure play for me there. And then Breece Hall gets a good matchup against the Bengals. We don't want to ignore that. From there, guys, Derrick Henry gets an interesting spot as well, going against the Chicago Bears. And also, this offense is most likely going to get Lamar Jackson back, which is just going to be a huge benefit for this whole offense as a whole. So we saw what he did in week 1 against the Buffalo Bills, obviously went off. If the Ravens are playing with the lead, that's always huge for Derrick Henry. And so he is simply put going to be one of the best GPP plays on the slate, period. okay, because of that massive upside that he has. I'm not exactly sure we can play him in cash, but he's priced at a price tag that is certainly going to make us think about it. From there, do you want to talk about DeAndre Swift? Swift ends up getting a pretty darn good matchup here as well. Now, I haven't gotten a chance to watch the film of this game just yet, but I do think it's worthwhile talking about the snaps that Swift ended up getting. He only got 52% of the snaps. He went off for us, again, almost 24 DFS points, which ended up being pretty darn awesome. Again, off of the pivot, off of the chalk. But what I had been waiting for was Kyle Monangai to get the workload that he got. At this point, I probably overdrafted him in best ball drafts. He was the last pick in basically all my DraftKings best ball drafts. Had about, I think, 60% ownership to him, and finally got a start out of him, which honestly, for a last round pick in best ball drafts, to even get one start out of him, that's pretty good. You guys know, he's been someone I've been hyping up the whole year now. It was awesome to see him finally get a lot of work and look good at doing it as well. He ended up gaining 46% of the snaps. So kind of interesting there. Maybe that's going to be the split we can expect. Maybe a 60-40 split going forward. Swift has been playing too well for Monangai, I think, to overtake him. Both of them in that matchup, though, against Baltimore are certainly going to be good GPP options. And this is kind of the issue with the pricing of the running back position. We kind of have to talk through all the scenarios at the running back position. So like someone like Chase Brown, who ended up getting his most snaps recently with Joe Flacco under quarterback, is someone that we should be thinking about as a play. So Chase Brown ended up getting 63% of the snaps last week. Looked good doing it. Still annoyed. There was spots early on in the game where I'm just like, rush the football with Chase Brown. He's giving you 3.5 yards per carry. And obviously they end up breaking, and I don't want to complain about the play calling because obviously it worked out. They ended up scoring 33 points and winning the game. But I'm just like, you can rush the football here. You do not have to throw it this much. And it's like we can't really trust Chase Brown at this point. But it is a very good matchup with the Jets. And so if the Jets are going to continue to struggle offensively, Chase Brown could finally get a pretty healthy workload like we saw him get in week 1 against the Cleveland Browns. That could finally end up happening. And if it does, obviously he's going to be in play at 5.4. So he's appealing GPP-wise. It would not be shocking to see him have a good game. He looks good. The talent's still there, but it is tough to tell you guys, like, yes, he's a great play. But that being said, we need to monitor some running back playing time for Monday night. I'm doing this video Monday afternoon. If Woody Marks out snaps Nick Chubb a bunch coming in off of the bye week and looks good, he's obviously going to be someone we can look to play. It wouldn't be surprising if he gets 60% of the snaps and then Nick Chubb 40%. I still think Nick Chubb is like a touchdown dependent play. It really comes down to, are the rest of the weapons for the Niners going to be healthy in this game? Really, Ricky Pearsall and Brock Purdy, because if the Texans are going to have to play from behind in that game, then Woody Marks becomes a better play because he is the third down running back there for the Texans. All right, guys, so we did spend a lot of time breaking down the running backs. I felt like it was necessary. We're going to jump into the receivers. Going to be a little bit faster paced here. We're just going to talk about some of the easier clicks. And to me, they're once again kind of in this, let's just say 6.4K range and lower. Starting with Courtland Sutton again. So Courtland Sutton draws another good matchup here against the Dallas Cowboys. Bo Nix, coming in off of a very good game, very good fourth quarter, let's just say. You would think that they'd be able to carry that momentum into this week. So again, a second week with a very good matchup. We saw Courtland Sutton end up getting 10 targets in that game, 87 receiving yards, end up getting a 2-point conversion as well, which is always a little bit annoying instead of it being a touchdown, but we'll take it. Again, he did have a play designed for him to score a touchdown, just a very good defensive play at the goal line. He got popped on the play. Very good tackle. But again, another good game. Very good price tag for him again. Let's just continue to roster him. A.J. Brown and also Devontae Smith are definitely going to be in play in this game against the Giants, a team that we were attacking last week because they give up just a bunch of receptions and production to opposing receivers. Both of them are in play. We're probably... The issue is you got the Saquon Barkley stuff, the revenge game stuff. Will they try to feature him a little bit more? Overall, we should just be targeting the Philadelphia Eagles, next week. From there, Chris Olave ends up being in a pretty good spot again against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He continues to be impressive. 2 touchdowns last week. I kind of mentioned I thought Spencer Rattler was due to score 2 touchdowns. For part of the game, Chris Olave was actually out as well, so it would have been interesting to see if he could have had a little bit of a better stat line, but tough to beat almost 27 DK points. He should be priced higher. He just has a high floor with his receptions, so he's certainly someone we're looking at as well. Michael Pittman Jr., if Josh Downs ended up being out in this game as well, we're going to be looking at Michael Pittman Jr. as a pretty strong play. 9 targets last week. He's really only had one massive dud this year, and against Denver, not exactly a matchup you're targeting him. Also a little bit of a dud. Decent matchup against the Titans, so don't mind him. The player I'm probably getting to the most in this, kind of soft pricing range is going to be Wendell Robinson, though. So he has certainly taken over as the receiver number 1 for this offense. We see 12 targets last week, guys, 7 targets the week before that. He had already been a guy that was going to get a lot of targets. The question was, what will the offense look like after Malik Neighbors is gone? And thankfully for the Giants, Jackson Dart has been great. So the offense has actually looked a little bit better. And you look at the Eagles, they give up the 6th most receptions in the league, the 4th most receiving yards. They don't give up a lot of touchdowns, which for Wendell Robinson, that's not where we're going to be targeting Wendell Robinson. We're going to target him because of the good matchup, because he can get some receiving yards and receptions at a soft price tag in a good matchup. So he is someone I think we probably will be looking at as a core play as well. So like Sutton, Robinson, Jonathan Taylor, but John Robinson, definitely core play. CMC, sure, core play. Again, it's tough to get to. You're not going to get to all 3 of those. We have to make some decisions. And that's where, again, I kind of applaud the pricers for DraftKings for this week finally. Then we do need to talk about Calvin Ridley. So he ended up sitting in that game, and I kind of expect him to sit in this game. It will be interesting to see if they try to trade him at all. Seems like a good candidate to do that if he's not significantly injured, because I've been impressed with the young rookie receivers for the Tennessee Titans. So I kind of mentioned last week, I thought DK would end up being a sneaky good value for us, end up scoring 17 DK points in that game. So that ended up working out. I also really like Van Jefferson as kind of a safe value play as well. 8.1 DFS points for him. So pretty darn good stuff there. And then Ayu Manor ended up being the lead snap getter. It was both Ayu Manor and Van Jefferson getting, I think it was like 76% of the snaps, and DK about 58%. So just keep that in mind. Don't be surprised if it ends up being an Ayu Manor game instead, but Van Jefferson and also DK being priced that low are more in play, but they're all in play. I mean, it's a decent matchup against the Colts. You know it's going to be a negative game script, a game script where the Titans are going to have to throw the football more. We should be trying to get to one of these plays, and I would say about 20% of our builds, if you're doing 150 lineups, I would say that's kind of the rule I'm thinking about setting right now. I will say this price for Drake London is certainly appealing. I mean, he had getting 10 targets last night on Sunday Night Football. Not a good game for him, but 10 targets, a little bit better matchup against Miami. Do we necessarily want to double dip with Bijan and Drake London? I think I'd be okay with that. I do. And then let's go ahead and jump on into the tight end position here, guys. So if Josh Downs is still out, I do think Tyler Warren is someone we should be looking at. I will say maybe a little bit lucky with the play, though, last week, because he scored a touchdown. I actually thought he'd get a little bit more target volume, but because they were playing with the lead by so much, they didn't really need to throw the football that much. He was still efficient. That would be the same worry against the Titans, where they just don't have to throw the football much, and so maybe his upside's a little bit capped. I wouldn't be shocked if George Kittle gets a little bit more involved in this game. Again, only 2 targets for him. If Ricky Pearsall's out, I kind of think he's their top pass catcher. CMC, obviously, in that mix as well. It's just this price tag for George Kittle is kind of crazy to me, and so he should be at 5K at least. Not terrible. Fannin gets a good spot again this week, guys. End up with 5 targets, 4 receptions, 36 receiving yards. Again, not terrible. Ended up working out. Core play wise, I don't think you can really be too mad about that at 3.9. The only reason you'd be mad about it is if you just didn't play Gadsden as a result. So if that was the case, apologies, but should be good weather. It is the time of the year where we do have to mention that. Again, that's why I got off of him a little bit as the week progressed. I think he's fine. I think he's a good click at 4.4 still. They're assuming that David Njoku ends up sitting. Fannin ended up playing basically all the snaps still. And so, yes, we got to pay attention to that. Dalton Kincaid, if he is out, Dawson Knox is okay. Dalton Kincaid, if he's active, is a little bit interesting there in that matchup against the Carolina Panthers. We have seen him hold some pretty good GPP upside. And then from there, I'm kind of leaning to Mason Taylor a bunch. He ended up playing like 90% of the snaps. Gets another good matchup here against the Cincinnati Bengals. Kind of hoping for Tyrod Taylor, honestly, instead of Justin Fields, please. And then we can feel a little bit more confident about Mason Taylor. So I've mentioned this already, guys. The worry in week 5 was Justin Fields being the quarterback in that game in a good matchup, and then Taylor ended up having a good game. And then we've seen kind of Justin Fields struggle really the last 2 weeks. And so I am kind of expecting it to be Tyrod, and so if that happens, I'm going to be a little bit more inclined to play Taylor. Gunnar Helm, if this game ends up being a game where they are playing from behind, then Gunnar Helm is definitely the pass-catching tight end. He is someone that looks good. It makes sense to get him some work, and so It might still be about a 50-50 split or so. Okonkwo outsnapped him last week, so we'll see what ends up happening there. But again, given the expected negative game script, Gunnar Helm, much more the pass-catching tight end, is going to be someone we are looking at there as well. So this is kind of what I'm looking at as the start of the build. For defense, I'm just going to punt to the Titans for now. Again, it's like last week, guys. You would adjust that up to someone else. As the week progresses, we'll know kind of some injury reports and who's inactive or not active to be able to target defense a little bit more in a thought out way. As it currently sits, I really don't see much there in terms of like standout value. Yeah, I mean, there's not much there currently. I think like you would clearly want to pay up. I typically don't tell people to do that. So now let's end this video talking about the quarterbacks. So I do think the Buffalo Bills are going to look much better coming in off of the bye week. Lamar Jackson is back as well. So this is the first time in a while where we have had to, maybe even the whole year, where we've had to seriously think about if we're going to pay up at the quarterback position or not. Because again, I think the Bills are going to be better coming in off of the bye week. Jackson gets a very solid matchup against the Chicago Bears. You'd expect him to be fully good to go. That brings up another receiver play that I do really like, and I like in stacks, especially if you are playing Lamar Jackson, Zay Flowers. He draws a great matchup. He's at a very cheap price tag. He looks good, guys. He's a great talent. We kind of know that already. I would probably give him around 7 targets in this game as a min. And so at 5.4, he is a player I'm going out of my way to target. Again, especially in builds with Lamar Jackson. Jalen Hurts gets that phenomenal matchup. You could easily stack him with A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. From there, Baker against the Saints, I don't mind. But Bo Nix is clearly, I think, the best option on the slate considering his price tag against Dallas, a matchup that we want to be targeting. We saw him break the slate, going for 40 DFS points there. And it's been pretty solid other than that as well. We can't bank on 2 rushing touchdowns, obviously. But this is a matchup where you clearly throw the football. And so I really like stacking him with Courtland Sutton there. From there, Dart is still at a cheap price tag for a player that's going to rush the football a bunch. Caleb Williams, I don't mind him. I think we probably learned, though, either play Caleb Williams in the pass catchers or one of the running backs, okay? And it's just based off of how Ben Johnson feels like he can attack the defense there. I don't want to mess with Justin Fields, but he is cheap. You know, toss some exposure to him if he starts. The rushing upside, right? And so, obviously, we cannot do this specific lineup. So, let's see here. Pay down for, I don't know, Derrick Henry. That ends up working out a decent amount here, guys. I think it's a good first look build. Obviously, you could then pay up for DST a little bit if you don't like the Titans against the Colts. I get it if you don't. Dolphins against Atlanta, sure. I mean, I guess. Atlanta at home, though. Obviously, we don't like using Robinson with the Dolphins, but you guys get the point of this. I touched on this a bunch. So, guys, I did just realize I missed a tight end play that I do like a decent amount, and that's going to be Colston Loveland. Okay, so Cole Kmet left last week's game with a back injury. If he ends up being inactive, Loveland could be in for a pretty decent game in a good matchup against the Baltimore Ravens, a game that should be pretty high scoring. He ended up getting 63% of the snaps with Cole Kmet getting injured. And so, obviously, if you're trying to play Jonathan Taylor, you're going to need to find some value. And so here's another lineup, just kind of showing you guys what that could look like if you're trying to get to Jonathan Taylor. Swift, again, don't necessarily love the snap share they got last week, but this ends up being a little bit of a GPP stack somewhat. If you want to get to Zay Flowers in there, you could. Derrick Henry in there, you could as well. But this is kind of a lineup to show you guys. One, I like Colston Loveland, but I also want to show you guys a lineup with how it would look like if you're trying to get to Jonathan Taylor while also playing Bijan Robinson. Does get a little bit ugly there. So I think that's a pretty good starting point for week 8, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the coverage. If you did, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and also hit that notification bell so you're not missing out on any of the coverage that we are going to be putting out throughout the week and throughout the rest of the season. Also going to be putting out some NBA coverage here as well, guys. So if you guys are interested in NBA DFS or NBA props betting, make sure to subscribe to the channel as well. I didn't show you guys any of the NFL DFS tools throughout this video, minus the 9-to-5 write-up, but obviously that's going to be included in the 9-to-5 DFS membership, as well as all the NFL tools and also NBA, fantasy golf, and prop betting tools, all available to you guys for a low monthly cost of $10 a month. So if you guys are interested in that, head on over to 9to5sports.com and sign up for just $10 a month. Thank you for watching. Good luck. And as always, let's keep cashing.